Hey, it's Kley. Welcome to another video. Today, I want to take a look at a really inexpensive tube amp. It is the Monoprice Stage Right 15 watt all tube guitar amplifier. We're going to go ahead and do a lengthy tone demo and talk about some of its features and give it a little mini first impressions review. So if you're interested in that, let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, so a little bit of backstory. I have not owned an amplifier that I myself did not design and build for several years. Just looking around the room right now, I've got two Plexis, a Trainwreck, a 5E3 Tweed Deluxe, a Super Reverb. Okay, actually that's not a lie. I've got a little Fender Mustang practice amp that somebody gave me, and I've got a Princeton I'm working on. I got a whole bunch of stuff floating around, but really the tube amps that I play right now have all been ones that I built, and it's been that way for many years now. But I've always been curious about checking out some other amps, and specifically the super low end. Things made in China, the prices just continue to go down and down and down. So I've been kind of aware of this amp model. I'm confident it's made in China. The name brand on this one is Monoprice. I think it's also maybe sold under the name of Harley Benton or maybe some others like that. But it's a little 15 watt tube amp, and I was at a used guitar store and kind of kicking it around, and I saw this thing for sale. It was listed for $140. And I just kind of did some math in my head and just thinking about like buying components for amplifiers. For example, if you want to buy like a cabinet and a chassis and some transformers, that alone is going to be pushing probably $200 or $300. Even at this level of Chinese quality, it's really difficult to get just the raw components to be at that price range. So I busted this thing out and took a look at it and started playing it. Played it for about 5 or 10 minutes, and it sounded really, really good in the store. And so I just impulse bought it and brought it home, and we're going to do some tone clips. So let's just kind of start listening to some tone examples, and we'll kind of revisit this thing after we've heard it for a little bit. Take a look at the top panel on this thing. You can see it's got this Pro Audio Series. There's the model number 611815, and it's just got an on-off switch. It's got a pilot light. We've got reverb control. This tone control is kind of like a Vox, like a high-cut type control in the negative feedback loop. So it kind of provides some master tone shaping in the output section of the amp. You turn it down, it gets darker. Turn it bright, it gets brighter. This volume here is kind of your master volume. And I've found, with 15 watts, I pretty much leave this thing cranked most all of the time. Get the most amount of headroom out of it. It's got two EL84s in push-pull, and so I found cranking this guy up is probably best. We've got bass, middle, treble for a 3-band tone stack. To me, the tone stack sounds like more of a Marshall or a Bassman style tone stack, where it's after a cathode follower towards the end of the preamp section. Just I find that it's pretty effective at doing EQ tone shaping, whereas a more, the Fender style one, to my ear, tends to shape more of like the character of the tone rather than like the overall EQ. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, the bass, middle, treble actually works quite well. It has a nice usable range of sweep across the 3 pots. Then you've got your preamp gain. This is your most input, or closest to the input gain and volume control. I found that, first of all, mine is kind of weird. The pot is a little offset. It actually starts at 1 instead of 0, which I'm sure can be fixed just by adjusting the knob a little bit. But, I found the sweep of gain, you get it up to about 3, and that's where it has pretty good amount of clean headroom still. Once you get up to about 4 or 5, it starts to get pretty distorted, and then from there it just goes all the way up to a pretty medium gain, saturated classic rock lead tone, I guess how I would describe it. We've got 2 inputs on this model. This model is, I believe, the version 1. There is a second version that places the controls on the front panel, but this is version 1. The front panel is version 2. So with the 2 inputs, you've got a 15 watt input and then a less than 1 watt input. I'm going to talk maybe more about that later. I don't actually think this is really changing the wattage in any meaningful way, but we'll come back to that later. On the front, we've just got it's kind of got this cream Tolex with a I don't know, a pattern or something on it. Got kind of a dark gray grill cloth. It's got a 12-inch speaker. It's a Celestion 7080 or something like that. And which is definitely, it's a Celestion. It's a decent speaker, but of the Celestion line, it's probably one of the most inexpensive. You can see here it's an open back cabinet with a metal grill on the back. We've got a external speaker jack here. We've got an effects loop, which is kind of a nice touch, and then a foot switch for the reverb. You can see here on the inside we've got a output transformer, 2 EL84s. There's no rectifier tube, so it's definitely solid state rectified. We've got 3 12AX7s. We've got the phase inverter and then 2 preamp tubes. And then we've got a power transformer. Just looking at the transformers from the exterior, they appear to be looking at the transformers from the outside, they appear to be pretty small and kind of inexpensive transformers. They work fine, but they're not going to blow any doors off. The output transformer is going to saturate. It's going to do fine, but it's not going to be a real high headroom type experience. Then you can see the Celestion 7080 speaker in there. We've got a hardwired power cord. Not my favorite, but overall, I would say the build quality is fine. It's a pretty lightweight little amp. One last comment. It does have a spring reverb tank there on the bottom. So, that's the amp as a whole. My amp, the Pilot Light, works kind of intermittently, so I'll probably open it up and take a look at that at some point. But overall, it's definitely a nice little grab-and-go amp. And so far, I haven't really had any issues with it not being reliable. It survived the drive back to my house, so so far so good. Probably could use a little bit of a cleanup, but that's what we've got. All right, you've had a chance to hear the clips. You certainly are welcome to make your own conclusions yourself. If you're curious about my subjective opinions, I will provide them now. The amp, I think, sounds really quite good. It's impressive to me what you can get for $140 used. And I'm not saying it's good for a cheap amp. I'm saying it's a good amp. Really, the shortcomings are probably going to be on build quality. I haven't experienced those yet, other than just the Pilot Light being out. But just the quality of the components doesn't feel super high. Like the gain pot is a little bit off of where it should be. The power switch feels a little bit kind of finicky. I know that the inside's going to be PCB wiring, so it's going to be difficult to maintain, and replace components is going to be difficult to do. The cabinet as a whole is a relatively small cabinet. I would say it's maybe even a little smaller than like a Blues Junior that I used to own, but it's kind of in that ballpark. The Celestion speaker is okay. I would say it's adequate. With a small cabinet and an adequate speaker, a larger cabinet and a more high-end speaker would definitely improve the tone of this amp pretty well. And the build quality, it just kind of is what it is. I think a tube swap also could be something worth looking into. But really, in terms of this tone that you're getting and also the range of tones you're getting, I really enjoyed this thing. In terms of the feel that I was getting from it, It's definitely more of a British sounding amp. That's in part the EL84s, but also just the circuitry and the way that the tone stack is wired. I definitely got more of a British inspired amp with 3 preamp tubes. It's definitely more of a medium gain amp is what I would say. It's not going to be as clean as like a deluxe reverb, but it's also not going to be as heavy as like a JCM 800. It's going to kind of fall somewhere in between there. A couple things to note about the tone and feel. I felt like it was kind of best suited with that edge of breakup tone, where I was boosting it with, I was using a pedal clone that I built. Boosting that to a lead tone was awesome, and then using the guitar to clean it up a little bit was awesome, and then with more of those kind of just slightly gritty shades in between. That's where I felt this amp sounded best. Definitely, like I said, more of a British tone, somewhere between a Vox and a Marshall with a little bit of flavor of both. I felt like once you get the gain up really high, it kind of got a little bit compressy and a little bit maybe harsh, but honestly, it still sounded really quite good. Just maybe didn't stay as tight or as well defined as I would have liked. So, another note is I have done some research on the internet, and there seems to be some pretty consensus that this amp is probably a straight up clone of a Laney Cub 15 watt. I don't know if they called the Cub 12 or something, but it's Laney's 15 watt dual EL84 amp. So I found a schematic, and I actually really am interested in potentially opening this thing up and making some modifications. So if you're curious about that, leave a comment down in the comment section below, and I will very likely open this guy up and see what we find inside and document the circuit and talk about changes that I would make to it. But honestly, my initial impressions, this thing is awesome. It's going to be perfect as kind of a grab and go, stick it in the trunk and bring it to a jam type amplifier for me. Even just using it as a different voice, a dual EL84. I don't think I actually have one of those right now. And so just giving me a different voice, I really have enjoyed. One other thing too, just the layout and the feature set on this thing is actually really nice. Having the effects loop is a nice touch. Just even having the cut control as well as the 3-band EQ gives it a lot of versatility. And then between the master volume and the gain, you get a wide range from clean to distorted. To comment again on the 1 watt setting, to me, I believe the 1 watt, all it's doing is placing a post-phase inverter master volume at a fixed location. So it really isn't affecting the wattage or the power of the amp in any way or the voltage in any way, but it's just creating like a post-phase inverter master volume, which really is actually not a bad idea and kind of cool. But then the other thought too with the reverb is okay. It's definitely a little bit more on the subtle side. It's not giving me as much of a springy, boingy, intense, surfy type reverb as maybe you'd find in a black panel Fender. But just to give it a little bit of bounciness in room, it actually sounds really quite good. I believe the reverb circuit is driven by solid state, as just having 3 tubes, there wouldn't be enough there to drive the reverb tank with tubes. So I've actually found the reverb to sound really quite good, just as a subtle, roomy type sound. So overall, I gotta say, I'm pretty thrilled with this thing. I don't have a lot of high expectations that it's going to be like very robust and last me for decades, maybe like some of the hand-built ones that I've made. But at some point, I just gotta say it, for $140 to get a full tube amplifier like this is really a modern marvel of where we've come to with the global economy. So I really am quite amazed. As somebody that has spent a lot of time designing and building tube amplifiers, this thing is really cool for $140. And worst case scenario, if it dies, this would be a great donor to build maybe a Vox style amp into, just gut it and totally replace the circuitry. And that'd be a lot of fun. That'd be a super fun project. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section below. And I'd love to hear what you guys think. We'll see you again real soon. Take care. Bye.